It has no value. So stop buying into the BS lie the banks and credit card companies have been selling you about, oh, you have to protect your credit by making the minimum monthly installments for the next 88 years of your life. Got a crazy video for you today. She's not yours, it's just your turn. A woman should be a complement to your life, not the focus. Do the work. Women do not care about your struggles. They hang out at the finish line and they pick the winners. All right, what's up, my brothers from another mother? This is a video on debt. Applying the red pill lens to debt, I suppose. It's that time of year when I get a lot of coaching bookings from you guys dealing with money issues. So I don't think I've actually done a public video on this topic yet for the channel. I've talked a little more in depth with my guys community, so let's dive right into it. As many of you should be aware by now, if you're not, I've been heavily involved in the credit and collection space for a long time. I ran one of the largest debt relief companies in Canada for quite a while. Started the career in the early 90s, so it's been a bit. So let's just, this is my wheelhouse. A lot of guys are carrying credit card debt, and the spectrum of questions that I get goes anywhere from guys with gambling habits to making minimum monthly payments to student loan debt to car loans to mortgages to financing, all that sort of stuff. But I want to kind of sweep this from a broader spectrum on the topic of unsecured debt, which is essentially credit card debt. Unsecured is any kind of debt that you might have, guys, that isn't collateralized by something that has some value to it to keep the interest rate low. So a collateralized debt, like a mortgage, for example, you put up the house as collateral, you don't pay, the bank takes your house. Pretty sweet deal for the bank, by the way. Let me spend a minute on that one, because this is the insanity of debt. So let's kind of segue into the insanity of debt, because this is really what I wanted to talk about with this, to frame it for you guys. You go and buy a house, and a bank will go and give you money. It's really just numbers on a spreadsheet that they don't even have on deposit, meaning they don't have it in a vault. It's on a spreadsheet. It's a little wheeling dealing they got going on with the banks, or sorry, with the government when it comes to fiat currency. But they essentially loan you, I don't know, let's say $250,000, 250 grand to put down on your house after you've made the down payment, and you make the installment payments on the bank. Pretty sweet deal. The bank charges you whatever, 2.5%, 3.5% interest, depending on where we are when you guys are watching this, but it's relatively low interest. It's not credit card interest. Here's the best part for the bank, though. They're lending you money that they never have on deposit, so it's basically made up money. But then if you default on it, they have a collateralized item like a home, like real estate, a real asset that has some value. So they're essentially trading a no-risk proposition of numbers on a spreadsheet for a home that you live in. And if you can't pay for that, they take it away from you. So they've traded nothing for something if you ever default. And if you don't default, they get their interest payment. So it's a win-win-win situation always for banks and credit card companies. This is the fucking cold hard truth that a lot of guys don't seem to understand when it comes to money. And gentlemen, a lot of you guys spend way too much time chasing women instead of chasing excellence, and a lot of you will rack up a ton of debt. Ask me how I know. We've serviced thousands and thousands of Canadians. We only deal with Canada, but we've serviced thousands of people and probably written off close to well over $100 million worth of credit card debt right now. So I've seen a lot of this, and it all boils down to bad choices. Debt is really just a math problem. A lot of guys out there purport to be experts. I'm not going to name names, but they sell you bullshit programs like snowball programs and roll-up strategies. Most guys will go looking for a debt consolidation loan. Listen up here, guys. This is a valuable video. Most guys will go looking for a debt consolidation loan, and the problem with that is most of you are going to look to borrow your way out of a problem that you created with new money that you can't afford to pay because the interest rate's higher. Let that settle in for a second. Trying to borrow your way out of unsecured debt is dumb. Carrying unsecured debt is dumb. You're making payments at 19% interest. Most credit cards here, like Visa, MasterCard, Amex, stuff like that, is around 19.99% interest, something like that. Sometimes they'll offer you a promotional introductory rate, which evaporates after 6 months, along with your hopes of ever paying off the debt if you think that you're going to keep making minimum monthly installments to pay it off. It's a never ever plan is what we call it. Some of you guys may have heard the term deadbeat. I'm not sure if that's familiar to all countries around the world, but in North America, the term deadbeat has been around for a while. It's a coined phrase that is supposed to connect with somebody that doesn't pay their bills. But the truth of the matter is that the banks and the credit card companies, to them, the real deadbeats are guys like me. Guys that use their card, charge it up, pay it off in full at the end of the month while making no interest installments and collecting their points and flying around the world for free. They don't make money off me. You know, they're making their credit card transaction fees, but what I'm getting in points more than offsets that. So I'm not really that much of a profitable customer to the banks and credit card companies. What they want you to do is what the social narrative is, what the blue pill narrative is, what the lies tend to be, is just make your minimum monthly installments because you're the most profitable customer to them. You are their best customer. Not guys like me. It's the guys that are making their minimum monthly installments, lining the bank's pockets with gold, paying 19% or even 28.8% interest. A lot of retail store cards around here, like you know, the Home Depots, the Canadian Tires, the Best Buys of the world, they have a deal where it's around 28.8%. Again, it's all unsecured credit. So when you're not collateralizing the loan with anything, there's a lot of risk to them, which is why they charge you more. And they're banking on a chunk of you guys. I'm going to say it's around a third, at least a third anyway, a chunk of you guys not paying off the bill in full and making installment payments on that debt. Now here's the stupid part. And you know, this is as a function of society, just like most guys are stupid when it comes to women. They don't understand what drives attraction and desire and arousal and all that sort of stuff. I didn't get it until, you know, very recently anyway, in the last 5 odd years. But the stupid part for a lot of guys when it comes to money, you know, the blue pill part is they actually believe, based on the statements that they're looking at and what the credit bureaus are telling them, what the banks are telling them, that making the minimum monthly installments is going to pay off the debt. It doesn't. There's actually new fine print here in Canada. It was legislated in like almost 7 or 8 years ago, but nobody pays attention to it still because it's so small. But on most credit card statements, I mean, if you look for it, you'll see it if you're Canadian, it'll tell you how long it'll take you to pay off the debt if you just make the minimum monthly installments. And we've seen statements come into our office when we're enrolling new customers that can say as much as 80 odd years. I've even seen them over 100 years. Nobody's going to live that long to pay off the debt. But what they're banking on is that you're stuck in the endless cycle, spinning your wheels on the merry-go-round of debt, throwing money at interest-only payments forever and ever until kingdom come. There's fine print on your statements, gentlemen. Nobody reads these. I do, because I know all about this sort of business. But there's fine print that states how they apply your payments when they're applying them to the balance when you're making them. And it goes like this. It starts out with cash advances, interest, late fees, penalties, and then it goes to principal. So basically, it goes to everything else first, and then it hits the principal balance that you owe. So it is incredibly stupid, guys, to make the banks and credit card companies rich while you're depleting your family's wealth and resources, making installments to try to signal to the world that, you know, you've got something. Guys that go and lease, you know, vehicles when they have the capacity to get into something that would be a little more affordable to them. Like the problem with humans today is we usually reach for the very most that we can get, because there's there's slogans and logos that I've seen banks and credit card companies use, something along the lines like you've got more money than you think, or you're richer than you thought you were. And then they encourage people to go rack up to the maximum to get themselves in debt to the point where all they're doing is really making installment payments on cars that they really can't afford, living arrangements that they can't afford, furniture that they can't afford. They basically put you in this endless cycle of you can't afford it, but they got you in a spot where you're going to be making installments for as long as possible, so you line their pockets with gold. It's just a bad situation to be in. You want to talk about blue pill when it comes to money, credit, and debt? Making installments on your credit card balances is the dumbest thing that you can do to your financial health. You need to try to figure out how to minimize your lifestyle so that you can live in a way that allows you to have maximum freedom and ability to maneuver. And the only way that you're ever going to achieve that is if you eliminate debt. Now let's talk about debt relief options before I go real quick, because this is something I could talk about for hours. There's so many different rabbit holes and minutiae to sort of tackle this bike. It's kind of like the red pill. When you go down that, you start to see all these little paths and trails that lead off in different directions. But the common thought most guys have is borrow more money to get out of debt. I've already dealt with that. There's other things like bankruptcy. There's different chapters in bankruptcy here in Canada. They have different names for it in the States and other places in the world. But most of these programs, most guys don't know this, most of these programs are actually subsidized and endorsed by the state and they don't encourage a fast debt repayment or any kind of repayment schedule that benefits you as a consumer. Bankruptcy law here in Canada, for example, you're basically hiring a court-appointed agent who has a fiduciary duty to the banks and credit card companies. So even though you're paying them for the service to get you out of debt, to bankrupt you, the legislation is designed to make sure the banks and credit card companies get as much money back as possible. It's the most insane scheme ever put together. It's a shtick that everybody takes hook, line, and sinker. Like most guys take the shtick of, you know, happy wife, happy life, all that, you know, all those dum-dums out there. It's the same thing with credit card debt. You've been sold a bill of sale that is a bunch of lies. The other one, I'll tell you before we wrap up, is something tied into a non-profit credit counseling plan. They have different names for it around the world. I know in the UK it's like a voluntary repayment plan or something along that lines. In Canada they call it non-profit credit counseling. In the States it's also considered non-profit. They also have profit credit counseling. And there's a lot of stupid guys out there that think that nonprofit means free. And people don't understand how nonprofit works. The way that nonprofit credit counseling works in Canada anyway is they have a deal with the banks and credit card companies, an automatic deal where they will take a certain amount for an installment. So they don't actually reduce the principal that you owe. What they do is they marginally reduce the interest. Again, it's another kinder, more friendlier collection agency structure that the banks and credit card companies have set up that will facilitate them getting as much money back as possible at your expense. There's only one way to get out of debt. I'm going to say this again. There's only one way to get out of debt that benefits you guys as a consumer, that saves you the most amount of money possible, and that's settling the debt on your own. There's different ways you can do it. You can take it from a DIY approach. Okay, or you could hire a company to do it. My company does that. If you're in Canada, you can take a look at it. Most of you probably, well, not most of you, but some of you have already talked to it and approached it, so you know where to find it. It's just totaldebtfreedom.ca. But this isn't a sales pitch for that business. I don't want you to come to me, honestly. I mean, I'd rather you sort this out on your own so that you learn the lesson. Some guys want to hire our company. I mean, we deal with, you know, sometimes as much as a couple $100,000 in debt when we're eliminating it. So we're well versed on it. It's happened for 15 years. We've written off close to $100 million worth. But the thing being is you can do this yourself if you apply your time, resources, and effort to it. There's a lot of guides out there online around the world. So look for a local guide that's sold from an insider that's either run a debt negotiation business or, I mean, sometimes it's hard to distinguish the bullshitters from the truth tellers. But you want to look for somebody that's been involved in the business, that's giving you the most up-to-date know-how. If you're in Canada, I have a guide on Amazon. I'll link it in the top comment. It's less than $10. You can grab it on a Kindle. It's not available in print or Audible, so it's a Kindle only. If you're a guy in my community, it's on the Files tab, by the way. So if you're not aware because you're newer to the community, go to the Files tab, and there's a copy of my book. You can get it there for free. But go to Amazon, grab it. It'll tell you exactly how to negotiate debt on your own. It's the exact same process that we've used to negotiate for thousands, it's probably more than tens of thousands by now, but thousands of people in Canada where we've reduced their balance to something like 40 to 50 cents on a dollar. You can even get a better deal in some cases yourself if you approach it yourself, because one of the disadvantages to hiring a company is they know that it's what the company specializes in, so they tend to push back a little bit more. Whereas if you approach it from a consumer perspective, it's probably going to take you, I don't know, anywhere from 25 to maybe 35, 40 hours to do it yourself if you've got the average like 4 to 5 different credit cards, depending on how you approach it and who you know how to contact. But you can do it yourself, and you can get your debt written off probably on average, if you do it yourself, for less than 40 cents on a dollar. So what that means is if you owe 100 grand, you should be able to get out of debt for like 40 grand, maybe 30, maybe 25 if you're really good and aggressive and you got a good story approach. There's a lot more to those nuances. I don't like borrowing your way out of debt. The only time that it makes sense, guys, is if you have like 50 grand in credit card debt and you can take out a mortgage against your house to pay off the debt at a much lower interest rate, much lower than what your credit cards are. Then you can pay it all off in full and make the installments that way. But don't borrow more unsecured money to pay off unsecured money, because the interest rates here anyway are going to be around 35 to 40% on average, sometimes, you know, more than that. So you have to be really careful. Don't try to borrow your way out of debt, 1. 2, bankruptcy. I don't encourage it unless you've got nothing to lose. So what that means is you don't own your car, you don't own your home, you're renting, and you've got a significant amount of debt that's all unsecured. Going bankrupt is a quick way to get a clean slate from that perspective. So there's that. Nonprofit programs, I always discourage. There's nothing in it for you. There's nothing in it for you. There's a slight savings, but these nonprofits are really just kinder, friendlier collection agencies for the bank. If you want to learn more about credit and debt and the way that it works, I have another YouTube channel that's just under Total Debt Freedom for the Business, and I've published a lot of videos there. Unfortunately, it's not as sexy and as interesting as understanding the sexual marketplace like we talk about here, and the car stuff and the other things that I do. So if you're interested in learning more about it, you can go to that channel. There's tons of free videos there. My suggestion is stay away from the loans, the bankruptcies, unless it makes sense if you have no assets. Certainly stay away from the stupid shit that people lie about, like roll-up strategies, or, well, if you tackle the one with a lower interest rate first and this one, that. If you've got debt, your credit's shit. If you're just making minimum monthly installments on your debt, your credit is in the toilet. That's the last and final lie that I got to dispel before I go. Most of the time, you guys are sold a bill of sale, some bullshit from the credit bureaus and the banks that are telling you, even if you're just making monthly installments, your credit's going to be fine. It's not fine. If you've got 50 grand in debt on $50,000 worth of credit that you had available on multiple cards, and you go to a site like, I don't know, Kijiji or Craigslist, and you post that for sale, what are people going to offer to buy that off you? Absolutely nothing, because it has no value. Nobody has any interest in buying your credit if it's got debt racked up to the max on it. It has no value. So stop buying into the BS lie the banks and credit card companies have been selling you about, oh, you have to protect your credit by making the minimum monthly installments for the next 88 years of your life. Dumb. Okay? Stop it. That is the worst thing that you can do. All of that gets explained in my book and the other channel on Total Debt Freedom. You can dive into that if you want. I'll put a card up. You can check it out. That's debt wrapped up in, kind of like a, let's say from 25,000 feet as we look down at the landscape. I could go on about it for hours and get into great depth, but what I want to do is essentially cover the importance of, gentlemen, if you're making yourself your own mental point of origin, it's incredibly important that you put yourself first, your finances, your wealth creation first, and then you set aside all the BS lies. We're not just talking about BS lies that you've been told about the sexual marketplace, but BS lies when it comes to money and debt and facilitating lifestyle with debt is not smart. Get rid of the debt. This should be the year that you get rid of your debt and pay it off. And I've talked about the smart ways to do that. I've put together a guide, basically all the insider information my company's used, and put it in a simple step-by-step guide you can get off Amazon on a Kindle for less than 10 bucks. So if you are dealing with credit card debt, and basically the litmus test before I go is if you're making installments and you're not seeing the balance come down, it's time to take a different approach. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again without getting a different result. See you guys in the next video. Peace. All right, gentlemen, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button. Before you go, stick around for a minute. I've got some really useful links I want to share with you. Towards the top of all my videos where you can leave your public comment and do feedback because I read them all. I want to know what you think of it. There's a pinned comment by me. You just expand by hitting read more over here. Most of you guys probably don't know this, but YouTube basically either runs limited or no ads on my type of content just because of the nature of it and the way that they're going these days. So my channel sponsors help me out a ton. You guys are showering anyways. Well, I hope you are. So why not buy a handmade soap from a sponsor that supports the creation of content on my channel? So when you check out with coupon code Cooper, you get 10% off tactical soap and beard oil. It's a pheromone infused. It's a handmade product with no endocrine disruptors. So it doesn't do anything to mess with your endocrine system. It's a great, great product. Been using it for well over a year. It smells amazing. Women love it. There's a link over here. You can check it out. Also, I'll put a card up on the top right. Now, if you're over 35 and you want to put a little more emphasis on self-care and get your swagger and energy back, I want you to click this link. It's called alphafit.fit. Joel's put together this program specifically for 35 plus crowd men. And he's got all kinds of great workout programs and supplementation. All the stuff's amazing. I've been using it myself for the last few weeks. It's great. My Amazon storefront, a lot of you dudes are asking me about what books I recommend or what products I might use. I've linked them all over here, and the store continues to get updated. So if I've read a new book and I love it, it ends up in the store. Check that out for stuff that will help you guys understand the world a little bit better. Now, if you want to join my men's private community and support the channel and get premium videos, because a lot of the stuff that I put out here needs to be watered down. So my unfiltered stuff ends up in my community. We've got a private Facebook page. We do Q&A sessions bi-weekly. There's lots of amazing stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So if you're a guy that wants to network with a bunch of other men that are chasing excellence, that's where you do that. Card is up on the top right. If you want one-on-one coaching, you click this link. It bills by the minute. You can book a call with me one-on-one to help you out with whatever it is you're stuck on. I'll put a card up on the top right up over here. And last but not least, if you haven't got the free chapter from my upcoming book, I'm giving away the one on 19 red flags. We'll probably add another 1 or 2 as time goes on. Just click that link, opt into the list. I'll send you over the PDF so you can check it out. And I'll definitely notify you guys when the book becomes available. So thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video.